The old wooden floor of Miller's general store creaked under heavy boots as the tall man walked through the door. At 6 feet and 6 inches, he had to duck slightly to avoid hitting his head on the bell that announced every customer. His worn, cowboy hat cast a shadow over eyes that had seen too many lonely sunsets. 8-year-old Lucy May stood on her tiptoes, trying to reach a jar of penny candy on the high shelf. She had been saving her allowance for weeks, counting and recounting the coins in her small fabric purse. Her mother had sent her to the store to buy flour and sugar while she finished the evening chores back at their farm. The giant cowboy noticed, the little girl struggling. Without a word, he reached up and lifted the jar down, placing it gently on the counter where she could see it properly. "Thank you, mister," Lucy May said, looking up at the man who seemed to tower like a mountain above her. "You're really tall." The cowboy smiled for the first time in what felt like months. "You're welcome, little one. What's your name?" "Lucy May Thompson." "My mama owns the farm just outside town, the one with the red barn that's missing some boards." She spoke matter-of-factly, the way children do when they don't realize that missing barn boards might mean money troubles. "I'm Ben," the cowboy said, removing his hat politely. "Ben Carter. I live about 10 miles north of here." Lucy May studied his face carefully. Even at 8 years old, she had learned to read people. Her father had taught her that before the accident took him away 2 years ago. Ben looked strong and kind, but there was something sad in his eyes. The same kind of sad she sometimes saw in her mother's face when Mama thought no one was looking. "You look lonely," Lucy May announced with the brutal honesty that only children possess. Ben was taken aback. In all his 32 years, no one had ever spoken to him so directly. Most adults danced around feelings with polite conversation and careful words, but this little girl just said what she saw. "What makes you think that?" he asked, genuinely curious. Lucy May tilted her head, considering her answer. "Well, you always come to town by yourself. And when you think nobody's watching, you get this look on your face like you're missing something important. My mama gets that same look sometimes." Ben knelt down so he could talk to Lucy May at her eye level. Up close, he could see that she had her mother's eyes, bright and intelligent but carrying wisdom that seemed too old for such a young face. "Your mama gets lonely too?" he asked gently. "Oh yes," Lucy May nodded seriously. "Especially in the evenings when all the work is done and the house gets real quiet. She tries to hide it, but I see her sometimes sitting on the porch looking down the empty road like she's waiting for someone who's never coming." Ben felt something twist in his chest. He had noticed Elizabeth Thompson around town, a petite woman with determined shoulders who always seemed to be hurrying somewhere with purpose. She was polite when their paths crossed, but there was a wall around her, the kind that gets built after losing someone important. "Tell me about your mama," Ben said, settling more comfortably on one knee beside the store counter. Lucy May's face lit up. Talking about her mother was clearly one of her favorite subjects. "Mama's the strongest person I know," she began. "She gets up before the sun every single day to milk our cow, Bessie. Then she feeds the chickens and collects the eggs. After that, she makes breakfast and helps me get ready for school." She paused to take a breath, then continued with increasing enthusiasm. "And that's just the morning. After she walks me to school, she goes back home and works in the garden, fixes things that break, chops wood for the stove, and does the washing. When I come home, she's usually trying to repair something, the fence or the roof or the water pump that keeps making funny noises." Ben listened carefully. He could picture it all. A small woman trying to do the work of 2 people, keeping a farm running through sheer determination and endless hours. "She sounds like a remarkable woman," Ben said softly. "She is," Lucy May agreed. "But mister, she's getting tired, real tired. I see her hand shake sometimes when she thinks I'm not looking. And her back hurts her, especially after she tries to lift the heavy feed sacks or move the furniture to clean under it." The little girl's voice dropped to a whisper, as if she was sharing a secret. "Sometimes at night I hear her crying in her room. She tries to be quiet, but our house isn't very big. I think she's scared about how we're going to manage everything. The farm is too much work for just one person, but Mama's too proud to ask for help." Ben felt his heart breaking for this family he barely knew. He understood pride, It was the same stubborn pride that kept him isolated on his own ranch, convincing himself he didn't need anyone. What about other family? Grandparents or uncles who could help, he asked. Lucy May shook her head. Mama's parents died when I was just a baby, and Papa's family lives way back east. They wrote some letters after Papa died, but they never came to visit or offered to help with anything. She paused, then looked directly into Ben's eyes with an intensity that was startling. That's why I think you and Mama should meet properly, she said matter-of-factly. What do you mean? Ben asked, though something in his chest was already responding to the idea. Well, you're lonely, and you look like a good man who knows how to work hard. Mama's lonely, and she needs someone strong to help with the heavy work around our farm. It seems like you could help each other. The simplicity of 8-year-old logic was both charming and terrifying. Ben found himself actually considering what Lucy May was suggesting. It's not quite that simple, little one, he said gently. Grown-ups have to get to know each other slowly. Your mama might not want help from a stranger. But you're not a stranger anymore, Lucy May pointed out reasonably. You're Ben, and I'm Lucy May, and now we're friends. That means you're not a stranger to our family anymore. Before Ben could respond to this flawless child logic, the store's owner, Mr. Miller, spoke up from behind the counter where he had been listening to the entire conversation with growing amusement. That little girl's got a point, Ben, the older man said with a chuckle. Elizabeth Thompson is one of the finest women in this county, works harder than most men I know, and she's raising that daughter to be just as remarkable. Mr. Miller leaned forward conspiratorially. And between you and me, half the unmarried men in 3 counties have been trying to court her for the past year. But she won't give any of them the time of day. Says she's too busy keeping the farm running to think about romance. Lucy May clapped, her hands together excitedly. See? Mama needs someone who understands about hard work and taking care of things. Someone who wouldn't just want to court her with flowers and pretty words, but who would actually help make her life easier. Ben found himself nodding along with her reasoning. He had been living alone for so long that he had almost forgotten what it felt like to have someone to care for, someone who might need him. What exactly are you suggesting I do? He asked Lucy May. Her eyes sparkled with the excitement of a plan coming together. Well, our fence posts are all wobbly, and 3 of them are completely broken. Mama tries to prop them up with whatever she can find, but they keep falling over. And our barn door doesn't close right anymore, so the wind blows through and scares the animals. She counted on her small fingers as she continued. And the roof leaks when it rains hard, right over where we keep the feed for the animals. Mama puts buckets out to catch the water, but she can't get up there to fix it properly because she's afraid of heights. Ben could picture each problem clearly. They were all things he could fix easily with the right tools and materials. More importantly, they were the kind of repairs that would take several visits to complete properly. Those do sound like problems that need attention, he agreed thoughtfully. So you could come help, Lucy May said triumphantly. And while you're fixing things, you and Mama could talk and get to know each other. Then you wouldn't be lonely anymore, and Mama wouldn't have to worry about everything breaking down. The plan was so innocent and hopeful that Ben felt something warm spreading through his chest, a feeling he hadn't experienced since before his own family was taken by the influenza epidemic 5 years ago. What if your mama doesn't want help? From someone she doesn't know well? He asked. Lucy May considered this seriously. Mama always says that good neighbors help each other, and she's always ready to help other people when they need it. Mrs. Patterson's baby was sick last month, and Mama took over soup and sat up all night helping take care of him. She looked up at Ben with complete confidence. Mama would help you if you needed it, so it's only fair that you should help her when she needs it. The logic was unshakable. Ben found himself making a decision that would change 3 lives forever. All right, Lucy May, he said, standing up and settling his hat back on his head. I think I'll pay your mama a visit this week. Maybe I'll mention that I heard you might need some help with fence repairs. Lucy May beamed with joy. Really? You'll come to our farm? I'll come to your farm, Ben confirmed. But let me handle talking to your mama about it, okay? Sometimes grown-ups need to approach these things carefully. 3 days after the meeting at Miller's General Store, Ben Carter found himself standing at the edge of the Thompson farm, his wagon loaded with fence posts, wire, and tools. The morning sun cast long shadows across the property, and he could see exactly what Lucy May had been talking about. The farmhouse was small but well-maintained, painted white with green shutters that had seen better days. The red barn she had mentioned did indeed have several missing boards, and the fence line that ran along the road looked like it was held up more by hope than by actual posts. Ben took a deep breath and guided his horses up the dirt path toward the house. He could see someone moving around in the vegetable garden behind the building, a slight figure in a blue work dress and sunbonnet, bent over what looked like tomato plants. As his wagon wheels crunched on the gravel, the figure straightened up and turned toward the sound. Even from a distance, Ben could see the cautious way Elizabeth Thompson held herself, one hand shading her eyes as she tried to identify her unexpected visitor. He pulled the wagon to a stop near the front porch and climbed down, removing his hat as he approached. Elizabeth wiped her hands on her apron and walked toward him, her steps measured and careful. "Good morning, ma'am," Ben called out when he was close enough to speak without shouting. "I'm Ben Carter. I believe I met your daughter Lucy May in town a few days ago." Recognition dawned in Elizabeth's eyes, followed immediately by concern. "Is everything all right? Did Lucy May do something wrong?" "Oh no, ma'am, nothing like that," Ben assured her quickly. "Lucy May was perfectly behaved. In fact, she was quite helpful. She mentioned that you might have some fence repairs that need attention, and I thought I might offer my services." Elizabeth looked puzzled. She glanced at the wagon full of supplies, then back at Ben's earnest face. "I'm sorry, Mr. Carter, but I don't understand. Did someone hire you to work on our property?" Ben felt heat rise in his cheeks. This was the tricky part, explaining his presence without revealing that her 8-year-old daughter had essentially tried to play matchmaker. "Not exactly hired, no ma'am," he said carefully. "I was in town getting supplies for my own place, and Lucy May and I got to talking. She mentioned that you've been managing this farm on your own since your husband passed. I know how difficult that can be." Elizabeth's expression grew more guarded. "Mr. Carter, I appreciate your concern, but I'm managing just fine. I don't need charity." "I'm sure you are managing," Ben said quickly. "Anyone can see that this is a well-run property, but I also notice that some of these fence posts are in pretty rough shape. If they fall completely, you could lose livestock or have other people's animals wander onto your land." He gestured toward the most obviously damaged section of fencing. "I'm not offering charity, ma'am. I'm offering to trade work for work. I could use help with my own harvest in a few months, and I know you've got experience with managing crops." This was partially true. Ben did need help with his harvest, though he had been planning to hire day laborers from town. But the offer gave Elizabeth a way to accept help without feeling like she was taking handouts. Elizabeth studied him for a long moment. Up close, Ben could see the weariness that Lucy May had mentioned, etched in fine lines around her eyes and in the way she held her shoulders. But he could also see strength and intelligence, and a natural wariness that came from having to protect herself and her daughter alone. "Where exactly is your property, Mr. Carter?" she asked finally. "About 10 miles north up near Bear Creek. I inherited it from my uncle about 6 years ago. It's not as organized as your place. I'm still learning the finer points of farming." "And you think I could help you with your harvest?" "I know you could," Ben said sincerely. "Lucy May told me about your garden and how you manage your crops. It's clear you know what you're doing." At the mention of her daughter, Elizabeth's expression softened slightly. "Lucy May talks quite a lot for an 8-year-old. She's a remarkable little girl," Ben agreed. "Very bright and clearly devoted to you." Just then, as if summoned by their conversation, Lucy May came racing around the corner of the house. She had apparently been playing with the chickens in the backyard based on the feathers stuck to her dress and the excitement on her face. "Mama, Mr. Ben came to fix our fence," she announced breathlessly, running straight to her mother's side. Elizabeth looked down at her daughter with a mixture of affection and exasperation. "Lucy May, did you ask Mr. Carter to come here?" Lucy May shifted from foot to foot, suddenly looking less certain of herself. "Well, I didn't exactly ask him. We just talked about how our fence posts keep falling over and how you worry about them. And Mr. Ben seems like he knows about fixing things. Lucy May Thompson, Elizabeth said in that tone all mothers use when they're trying to figure out exactly what their child has done. What exactly did you say to Mr. Carter? Ben intervened. Before Lucy May could get herself into trouble, she just mentioned that you had some repairs that needed attention, Mrs. Thompson. The decision to come offer help was entirely mine. Lucy May shot him a grateful look, then turned back to her mother. Mama, you always say that good neighbors help each other, and Mr. Ben is our neighbor, right? Even if he lives 10 miles away? Elizabeth sighed, but Ben could see that she was fighting back a smile. Lucy May, grown-ups usually discuss these arrangements between themselves. I know, Mama, but sometimes grown-ups are too shy to ask for help when they need it. The brutal honesty of the statement hung in the air between the three of them. Ben watched as Elizabeth's cheeks flushed pink, and he realized that Lucy May had hit uncomfortably close to the truth. Mrs. Thompson, Ben said gently, I understand if you're not comfortable accepting help from someone you don't know well. But these fence posts really do need attention, and I have the time and materials. To fix them properly, he gestured toward his wagon. I bought enough supplies to replace the worst sections and reinforce the others. If you'd rather pay me for the work, we can discuss a fair price. Or if you'd prefer the trade arrangement I mentioned, that works. 2. Either way, the fence will be safer for you and Lucy May. Elizabeth looked at the fence line, then at her daughter's hopeful face, then back at Ben. He could almost see her weighing pride against practicality. Those posts have been worrying me, she admitted finally, especially the one near the road. Every time a strong wind comes through, I'm afraid it's going to fall completely and block the path. That one's definitely the priority, Ben agreed. But while I'm here, it would make sense to reinforce the others too. Prevention is easier than emergency repairs. Lucy May clapped her hands together quietly, sensing that her mother was considering the offer. All right, Mr. Carter, Elizabeth said slowly. If you're serious about the trade arrangement, my help with your harvest in exchange for fence repairs, then I suppose it would be foolish of me to refuse. It's a deal then, Ben said, extending his hand to shake on the agreement. Elizabeth's hand was small and calloused in his, but her grip was firm and confident. Thank you, Mr. Carter. I truly appreciate your offer. Please call me Ben. If we're going to be working together, we might as well be friendly about it. Then you should call me Elizabeth, she replied, and for the first time since he had arrived, she gave him a genuine smile. Lucy May looked back and forth between the two adults, practically vibrating with excitement but trying to contain herself so she wouldn't say anything to mess up this promising development. Well then, Elizabeth, Ben said, settling his hat back on his head, I suppose I should get started. This fence isn't going to fix itself. Would you like some coffee before you begin? Elizabeth offered. I was just about to take a break from the garden anyway. Coffee sounds wonderful, thank you. As they walked toward the house, Lucy May skipped alongside them, chattering happily about everything and nothing. She pointed out the chickens and introduced Ben to each one by name, showed him the vegetable garden, and explained which plants were doing best, and generally served as an enthusiastic tour guide of their small farm. Ben found himself relaxing in a way he hadn't in years. There was something so peaceful about this place, not just the tidy farmhouse and well-tended garden, but the sense of family, of people who cared for each other and their home. Elizabeth served coffee on the front porch, along with slices of apple cake that she apologized for, claiming it wasn't her best work. Ben thought it was the most delicious thing he had tasted in months, but he didn't say so, not wanting to embarrass her with excessive praise. Instead, they talked about practical things, the best techniques for setting fence posts, the challenges of farming during dry spells, the pros and cons of different crops. Elizabeth was clearly knowledgeable about all aspects of running a farm, and Ben found himself genuinely looking forward to her help with his harvest. Lucy May sat quietly between them, swinging her legs from the porch chair and watching both adults with satisfaction. Her plan was working even better than she had hoped. Her mother was actually smiling and laughing, something Lucy May realized she hadn't seen enough of lately, and Mr. Ben looked more relaxed and happy than he had in the store. When they finished their coffee, Ben got to work on the fence while the dinner invitation stretched into something neither Elizabeth nor Ben had expected. What began as a simple meal of pot roast and vegetables became an evening of easy conversation that lasted until well past Lucy May's bedtime. They talked about books they had read, places they had traveled before settling into farming life, and shared memories of family members who were no longer with them. Ben found himself opening up in ways he hadn't in years. There was something about Elizabeth's gentle questions and genuine interest that made him want to share the stories he had kept locked away since his family's death. He told them about his uncle's ranch, about learning to work with cattle, about the quiet satisfaction of watching crops grow from seed to harvest. Elizabeth, in turn, shared stories about her late husband and the early days of their marriage, when they were both learning to run the farm. Lucy May had heard some of these stories before, but she noticed that her mother told them differently, with Mr. Ben listening, with more laughter and fewer of the sad pauses that usually came when Mama talked about Papa. Papa used to sing to the cows, Lucy May contributed when there was a lull in the conversation. Mama said it made them give more milk. That's actually true, Ben said with a smile. Animals respond to music and singing. My uncle used to whistle while he worked, and his horses were always calmer than anyone else's. Do you sing to your animals, Mr. Ben? Lucy May asked. Ben's cheeks reddened slightly. Well, I might talk to them sometimes, and maybe whistle a tune or two. What kind of songs? Lucy May pressed, delighted by this revelation. Lucy May, Elizabeth said gently, let Mr. Ben eat his dinner. It's all right, Ben assured her. I usually stick to hymns or old folk songs, nothing fancy. Could you sing one for us? Lucy May asked hopefully. Lucy May, Elizabeth protested, but Ben was already chuckling. I suppose I could manage something simple, he said. He thought for a moment, then began to sing in a rich baritone voice that filled the small kitchen. Red River Valley, where the cowboys are sleeping, where the owl keeps hooting his lonesome song, where the stars shine bright on the prairie so dreary, and the wind whispers soft all the night long. His voice was beautiful, warm and melodic, with just enough roughness to show that he was more comfortable singing to cattle than to people. Lucy May listened with wide eyes, and Elizabeth found herself watching Ben's face as he sang, noticing the way his expression softened. When he finished, there was a moment of appreciative silence. That was lovely, Elizabeth said softly. Papa never sang that pretty, Lucy May declared with her characteristic honesty. Ben laughed. Well, your papa probably had many other wonderful qualities. He did, Lucy May agreed matter-of-factly. But he couldn't fix fence posts as fast as you can, and he burned the biscuits whenever he tried to cook. Elizabeth smiled at her daughters. Practical assessment. Your papa had many talents, but cooking wasn't one of them. As the evening wore on, Ben found himself reluctant to leave. The warmth of family life, something he had thought lost to him forever, surrounded him in this small kitchen. Lucy May had fallen asleep in her chair, her head pillowed on her arms, and Elizabeth made no move to wake her. She's had an exciting day, Elizabeth said quietly, looking fondly at her daughter. Between meeting you and watching the fence repairs, she's probably worn herself out. She's a remarkable child, Ben said. You've raised her well. Thank you. It hasn't always been easy, doing it alone. Sometimes I worry that she's missing out on things, that she needs more people in her life than just me. Ben considered his words carefully. She seems happy and confident. Those are the most important things. But you're right that children benefit from having multiple adults who care about them. Did you ever want children? Elizabeth asked, then immediately looked flustered. I'm sorry, that's too personal a question. It's all right, Ben said gently. My wife and I talked about having children. We had been married 3 years when the influenza came through. We always thought there would be time later. Elizabeth reached across the table and briefly touched his hand. I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you. It was a long time ago now, but Some days it still feels fresh. Ben looked down at her small hand on his. What about you? Do you think about remarrying? Elizabeth withdrew her hand and busied herself with clearing dishes. I used to think I never would. John and I had something special, and I couldn't imagine replacing that. But lately, she trailed off, not finishing the thought. Lately? Ben prompted gently. Lately I've been thinking that maybe Lucy May is right about needing more people in our lives, and I've been feeling lonely, I suppose. It's been 2 years since John died, and while I loved him deeply, I'm starting to realize that I miss having a partner, someone to share the daily joys and worries with. Ben nodded, understanding. It's different, isn't it? Managing everything on your own. Even when you're capable of handling it, there's something to be said for having someone to talk things through with. Exactly, Elizabeth said, seeming relieved that he understood. Lucy May is wonderful company, but she's 8 years old. There are adult concerns and decisions that I can't share with her. What kind of decisions are weighing on you? Ben asked. Elizabeth hesitated, then seemed to decide that Ben had earned the right to know about their situation. Money, mainly. The farm provides enough for us to live on, but just barely. Every time something major breaks, like the roof or the water pump, it takes months to save up for repairs. And I worry about what will happen when Lucy May gets older and needs things like better clothes for school or books or, eventually, college if she's smart enough. She's definitely smart enough, Ben said with certainty. Yes, but intelligence doesn't pay for tuition. I've been thinking about taking in washing or sewing to earn extra money, but there aren't enough hours in the day as it is. Ben understood the weight of what she was sharing with him. Elizabeth was essentially admitting that despite her capable management, the farm wasn't quite enough to support them comfortably. What about expanding the farm, adding more crops or livestock? He suggested. I've thought about that, but it would require more land, and I can't afford to buy any. Plus, I'd need help managing a larger operation. As it stands now, I can barely keep up with what we have. Ben was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he made a decision that surprised even him. Elizabeth, I have a proposition for you. She looked up from the dishes she was washing. What kind of proposition? My ranch has more land than I can effectively use on my own, and you have farming expertise that I lack. What if we combined our operations? You could expand your crops onto some of my unused land, and I could help with the heavy work that's difficult for you to manage alone. Elizabeth turned to face him fully. What exactly are you suggesting? A partnership, Ben said carefully. We could share the work, share the profits, and both benefit from having a larger, more diversified operation. That's a very generous offer, Elizabeth said slowly. But partnerships between unmarried men and women tend to cause talk in small towns. Ben felt his heart skip a beat. Was she opening the door to discussing something more than a business arrangement? That's true, he acknowledged. People do tend to gossip about unconventional arrangements, and Lucy May would need to be considered in any decision I make. Her welfare and security come before everything else. Of course they do. Any arrangement would have to be good for Lucy May, too. Elizabeth was quiet for a long moment, clearly thinking through the implications of what Ben was suggesting. This is a lot to consider, she said finally. I'd need time to think it through properly. Take all the time you need, Ben assured her. I'm not going anywhere. Just then, Lucy May stirred in her chair and opened sleepy eyes. Is it time for bed? She asked drowsily. Past time, Elizabeth said with a gentle smile. Say goodnight to Mr. Ben, sweetie. Lucy May slid down from her chair and walked over to Ben. To his surprise, she reached up and hugged him around the waist. Good night, Mr. Ben. Thank you for fixing our fence and for singing to us. Good night, Lucy May. Thank you for inviting me to dinner. As Elizabeth carried the sleepy child toward the bedroom, Lucy May called back over her mother's shoulder. Mr. Ben, will you come back tomorrow? If your mama says it's all right, Ben replied, looking questioningly at Elizabeth. You're welcome anytime, Elizabeth said softly. After they disappeared down the hallway, Ben sat alone in the kitchen for a few minutes, absorbing what had just happened. In one evening, his entire life had shifted. He had gone from being a solitary rancher to someone who was part of a family's daily routine, someone who was thinking about partnerships and shared futures. When Elizabeth returned from tucking Lucy May into bed, she found Ben still sitting at the kitchen table, his hat in his hands. "I should probably head home," he said, standing up. "It's getting late and I know you have an early morning." "Ben," Elizabeth said as he moved toward the door, "about what you suggested earlier, the partnership idea." "Yes?" "I meant what I said about needing time to think, but I want you to know that I'm interested. In exploring the possibility, I mean." Ben felt something warm and hopeful expand in his chest. "I understand. It's a big decision." Over the following weeks, Ben's visits to the Thompson farm became as regular as the sunrise. What had started as fence repairs expanded into fixing the barn door, patching the leaky roof, and replacing several rotted steps on the front porch. Each project gave him a reason to return, and each return deepened the connection growing between him and the Thompson family. Elizabeth found herself looking forward to the sound of Ben's wagon wheels on the gravel path. She would catch herself glancing toward the road more often than necessary, and she began taking extra care with her appearance in the mornings, telling herself it was simply proper to look presentable when someone was doing work on her property. Lucy May was thriving under the attention of having another adult in her daily life. Ben had begun teaching her about different types of wood and how to use basic tools safely. She followed him around like an eager apprentice, asking endless questions about everything from why nails were made of metal to how he knew exactly where to place fence posts. "Mr. Ben," Lucy May said one afternoon as she handed him nails while he repaired a loose board on the chicken coop, "do you get lonely at your ranch all by yourself?" Ben paused in his hammering. Over the past few weeks, Lucy May had grown comfortable enough with him to ask increasingly personal questions. "Sometimes," he answered honestly. "Especially in the evenings when all the work is done. It gets very quiet." "That's how Mama used to be before you started coming around," Lucy May observed. "She used to sit on the porch after dinner looking sad, but now she hums while she cooks and she smiles more." Ben felt his heart skip. "Does she?" "Oh yes. And she's been making extra food lately. Mama says it's because hardworking men need good meals, but I think it's because she likes cooking for you." Before Ben could respond to this revelation, Elizabeth appeared around the corner of the chicken coop carrying a pitcher of lemonade and some cookies. "I thought you two might be getting thirsty," she said, but Ben noticed the slight flush in her cheeks that suggested she might have overheard part of their conversation. "That's very thoughtful," Ben said, accepting the glass gratefully. The late August heat was oppressive and he had been working since dawn. As they sat in the shade of the oak tree near the house, Elizabeth broached a subject that had been on her mind. "Ben, you've been helping us for weeks now, and we haven't talked about compensation. The fence repairs were supposed to be a trade for help with your harvest, but you've done so much more than that." "I don't mind," Ben said quickly. "I enjoy the work and I enjoy the company." "That's kind of you, but it's not fair. You're spending your own money on materials and your own time on labor. I need to pay you something." Ben was quiet for a moment, considering how to express what he was really thinking. "Elizabeth, I have a confession to make. I haven't been coming here just to be helpful." Elizabeth's eyes widened slightly. "What do you mean?" "I mean that I look forward to these visits more than I should if they were purely about work. I enjoy talking with you, sharing meals, being part of your daily routine. This farm feels more like home to me than my own ranch does." Lucy May looked back and forth between the two adults, sensing that something important was happening. "What are you saying?" Elizabeth asked softly. "I'm saying that I care about you. About both of you. More than just as neighbors or friends." Ben's voice was steady, but Elizabeth could see the vulnerability in his eyes. "I know it might be too soon or inappropriate, but I can't pretend my feelings are purely neighborly anymore." Elizabeth was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. It's not too soon. I've been having the same thoughts, the same feelings. But I wasn't sure if this was just kindness on your part. It started as kindness, Ben admitted, but it's become something much deeper than that. Lucy May, who had been listening with growing excitement, could no longer contain herself. Does this mean you love Mama? She asked directly. Both adults looked at her, startled by the blunt question. Lucy May, Elizabeth began, but Ben interrupted gently. Yes, he said, looking first at Lucy May, then at Elizabeth. I do love your Mama. And I love you too, Lucy May. I love this whole family. Elizabeth felt tears spring to her eyes. Ben, I know it's complicated, Ben continued. I know you loved your husband, and I'm not trying to replace him or compete with his memory. I just know that I want to be part of your lives permanently if you'll have me. What exactly are you asking? Elizabeth whispered. Ben took a deep breath. I'm asking if you would consider marrying me. Not just for practical reasons, although combining our farms would benefit all of us, but because I love you, and I hope, that you might love me too. Lucy May clapped her hands together silently, her eyes shining with joy. Elizabeth looked at this man who had become so important to them in such a short time. She thought about the loneliness that had been her constant companion for 2 years, and how it had disappeared since Ben started coming around. She thought about Lucy May's obvious affection for him, and how natural it felt to have him at their dinner table every evening. I do love you, she said finally. I didn't expect to, and I wasn't looking for it, but I do. You're kind and patient and hardworking, and you make Lucy May laugh. You make me feel like myself again instead of just a widow trying to survive. Reached across the small space between them and took her hand. Is that a yes? That's a yes, Elizabeth said, tears flowing freely now. If you're sure this is what you want, if you're ready to take on a ready-made family with all the complications that brings. Lucy May, Ben said, turning to the little girl who had made it all possible. How do you feel about the possibility of me becoming your stepfather? I think it's perfect, Lucy May declared. I've been hoping you would ask Mama to marry you. You're exactly what our family needed. Ben laughed, pulling both Elizabeth and Lucy May into a hug. Well, it sounds like we have a unanimous decision. As they held each other in the shade of the oak tree, Elizabeth marveled at how quickly life could change. 3 months ago, she had been facing another difficult winter alone, worried about money and repairs and the future. Now she was engaged to a wonderful man who loved both her and her daughter, and who could provide the partnership and security they needed. When should we have the wedding? Lucy May asked practically. Elizabeth and Ben looked at each other and laughed. Well, Ben said, I suppose we should figure out the practical arrangements first. Where will we live? How will we combine the farms? I've been thinking about that, Elizabeth said. Your ranch house is larger and you have more land. It would make sense for Lucy May and me to move there. But I'd want to keep this property too, maybe rent it out or use it for additional crops. That sounds perfect, Ben agreed. And Lucy May, there's a room at my house that would be perfect for a little girl. It has windows facing east so you'd get the morning sun, and there's a big oak tree outside that's perfect for a swing. Can I bring my chickens? Lucy May asked seriously. Of course you can bring your chickens, Ben assured her. And your cat, and anything else that's important to you. Over the following hour, they planned out the practical details of combining their lives. Ben would sell some of his cattle to make room for Elizabeth's chickens and dairy cow. Elizabeth would bring her expertise in vegetable farming to expand Ben's garden. They would work together on the harvest, as originally planned, but now as partners in every sense. What about the wedding itself? Elizabeth asked. I don't need anything fancy, but I'd like it to be proper. The church in town, Ben suggested. Pastor Williams could perform the ceremony. And we could have a reception at the church hall, Elizabeth added. Nothing elaborate, just cake and coffee for anyone who wants to come. Can I be the flower girl? Lucy May asked hopefully. Of course you can, Elizabeth said, hugging her daughter. You're the most important part of this whole thing. When? Ben asked. I don't want to wait too long, but I know you'll need time to prepare. Elizabeth considered. October, after the harvest is finished but before the weather gets too cold? October. Sounds perfect, Ben agreed. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the farm, the three of them remained sitting under the oak tree, talking about their future together. Ben described his ranch in detail, helping Lucy May picture her new home. Elizabeth shared her ideas for expanding their farming operation. Lucy May contributed her own plans, which included teaching Ben's horses to like her chickens, and maybe getting a dog to help with farm work. Lucy May, Elizabeth said eventually. Do you remember what you told Mr. Ben that first day in the store? I told him he looked lonely, and that you needed a strong man to help with the heavy work. Lucy May recited proudly. And you were right, Ben said. You saw exactly what both your mama and I needed even when we didn't see it ourselves. I'm very smart, Lucy May agreed matter-of-factly. Mama says I get it from Papa, but I think I also get it from her. You definitely get it from both of them, Ben said. And you use that intelligence to bring together two people who belong together. As Ben prepared to leave that evening, though now the departure felt different, temporary, since soon they would all be going home to the... October arrived with a burst of golden leaves and crisp morning air that made everyone feel energetic and hopeful. The wedding was planned for the third Saturday of the month, giving Elizabeth and Ben time to complete the harvest and make arrangements for combining their households. The entire community had rallied around the upcoming marriage. Mrs. Henderson from the dress shop had offered to alter Elizabeth's mother's wedding dress, which had been carefully preserved in a trunk for just such an occasion. Mr. Miller from the general store insisted on providing the cake as a wedding gift. Even the normally reserved Pastor Williams had shown unusual enthusiasm, declaring that he hadn't performed such a joyful ceremony in years. Lucy May had appointed herself the unofficial wedding coordinator, keeping track of every detail with the seriousness of someone planning a state dinner. She had lists of who was bringing what food to the reception, what flowers were available for decorating the church, and what songs should be sung during the ceremony. Mama, she announced one morning while Elizabeth was packing dishes in preparation for the move to Ben's ranch. Mrs. Patterson says her roses are still blooming and she'll cut some for my flower basket. And Mr. Thompson, the other Mr. Thompson, not us, says he'll play his fiddle for dancing if people want to dance at the reception. That's wonderful, sweetheart, Elizabeth said, wrapping a delicate teacup in newspaper. You've done such a good job organizing everything. Well, somebody had to, Lucy May said practically. You and Mr. Ben are too busy being all moon-eyed to remember important details. Elizabeth blushed. It was true that both she and Ben had been somewhat distracted lately, but she hadn't realized it was so obvious to her 8-year-old daughter. We're not moon-eyed, she protested mildly. Mama, yesterday you put salt in your coffee instead of sugar, and you didn't even notice until you took a sip. And Mr. Ben tried to hammer a nail with a screwdriver for about 5 minutes before he realized what he was doing. Elizabeth had to admit that Lucy May had a point. The anticipation of the wedding and the big changes coming had left both bride and groom somewhat scattered. The week before the wedding brought a flurry of activity. Ben spent his days moving Elizabeth's and Lucy May's belongings to his ranch, while Elizabeth supervised the careful packing of her most treasured possessions. The chickens had already been relocated, along with Bessie the cow, and Lucy May reported that they were settling in well to their new home. Bessie likes the bigger pasture, Lucy May informed her mother after spending an afternoon at the ranch. And the chickens are getting along fine with Mr. Ben's roosters. I think they're going to be one big happy chicken family. Just like we're going to be one big happy people family, Elizabeth said, hugging her daughter. 2 days before the wedding, Ben arrived at the Thompson farm to collect the last of their belongings, but found Elizabeth sitting on the front porch steps looking overwhelmed. What's wrong? He asked, sitting down beside her. I'm scared, Elizabeth admitted. Not about marrying you. I want to marry you more than anything. But I'm scared about leaving this place. John and I built our life here. Lucy May was born in that bedroom. All my memories of him are tied up in this house. Ben nodded understandingly. You're worried that moving away means leaving him behind. Something like that, yes. Ben was quiet for a moment, then took her hand. Elizabeth, John will always be part of who you are, and part of who Lucy May is. That doesn't change because you live somewhere else, and I would never want you to forget him or stop loving the memories you have. I know you wouldn't, Elizabeth said softly. You're not that kind of man. But still, what if we made this house part of our new life instead of something we're leaving behind? Ben suggested. We talked about renting it out, but what if we kept it for family gatherings? Holidays, special occasions, times when we want to remember and celebrate your history with John? Elizabeth looked up at him with surprise and gratitude. You would do that? Of course I would. This house is where you became the woman I fell in love with. It's where Lucy May learned to walk and talk and think for herself. It's important, and it should stay in the family. Elizabeth felt tears of relief spring to her eyes. Thank you for understanding. We're going to be partners in everything, remember? That includes honoring the past while building the future. That evening, as they finished loading the last of the dishes into Ben's wagon, Elizabeth took one final walk through the empty rooms. In each room, she said a quiet thank you to John for the years they had shared, and a promise that she would love their daughter enough for both of them. Lucy May found her in the bedroom she had shared with John, standing by the window that looked out over the garden. Are you sad, Mama? Lucy May asked softly. A little, Elizabeth admitted. But mostly, I'm grateful. Grateful for the time I had here with your papa, and grateful for the new life we're starting with Ben. Papa would like Mr. Ben, Lucy May said confidently. They're both good men who love their families. Elizabeth knelt down to hug her daughter. How did you get so wise? I listen a lot, Lucy May said simply. And I think about things. And I remember what Papa used to say about how love doesn't run out just because you share it with more people. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and bright, with the kind of perfect autumn weather that felt like a blessing. Elizabeth woke up in the small room at Ben's ranch that would serve as her dressing room, with Mrs. Henderson and two other ladies from town already bustling around preparing for the ceremony. Ben had spent the night at his neighbor's house, following the tradition that the bride and groom shouldn't see each other on the wedding day until the ceremony, but he had left a note for Elizabeth on her breakfast tray. Today we start our forever, I can't wait. Lucy May was in her element as the ladies helped Elizabeth into her mother's wedding dress. The gown needed only minor alterations, and the soft ivory silk complemented Elizabeth's coloring beautifully. You look like a princess, Mama, Lucy May breathed, admiring her mother in the mirror. You look pretty beautiful yourself, Elizabeth replied, straightening the blue sash on Lucy May's dress. Lucy May had chosen to wear her best Sunday dress rather than asking for something new, saying that she wanted to look like herself on such an important day. At the church, the small sanctuary was filled with flowers from various gardens around town. The entire community had turned out for the wedding, farmers and shop owners, families with children, and elderly couples who remembered Elizabeth's first wedding and were delighted to witness her second chance at happiness. Ben stood at the altar with Pastor Williams, looking handsome and nervous in his best suit. When the door at the back of the church opened and Lucy May appeared with her basket of rose petals, he felt his heart jump with anticipation. Lucy May walked down the aisle with perfect composure, scattering petals and grinning at everyone she knew. When she reached the front of the church, she took her place to the side and turned to watch for her mother. The moment Elizabeth appeared in the doorway, a hush fell over the congregation. She was radiant with happiness, and as she walked down the aisle toward Ben, her face glowed with love and certainty. Ben felt tears spring to his eyes as he watched his bride approach. This woman who had captured his heart with her strength and gentleness, who had welcomed him into her family, and trusted him with her future, was about to become his wife. The ceremony was simple and heartfelt. Pastor Williams spoke about the blessing of second chances and the way love can grow and multiply when hearts remain open to possibility. When it came time for vows, Ben and Elizabeth had chosen to speak their own words rather than using traditional promises. Elizabeth, Ben said, his voice strong and clear. I promise to love you and Lucy May with everything I have. I promise to be your partner in work and in rest, in joy and in sorrow. I promise to honor the love you shared with John while building a new love with you that will last the rest of our lives." Elizabeth's voice was steady despite her tears. "Ben, I promise to love you completely and trust you with my heart and my daughter's future. I promise to build a home with you where love grows and laughter is heard every day. I promise to be your partner in all things and to face whatever comes with courage, because we'll face it together." When Pastor Williams pronounced them husband and wife, the kiss they shared was gentle and full of promise. Lucy May clapped enthusiastically from her place of honor, and the entire congregation erupted in joyful applause. The reception at the church hall was everything the couple had hoped for: warm, community-centered, and full of laughter. The cake was delicious, the fiddle music got everyone dancing, and the gifts of preserves, quilts, and household goods would help establish their new home together. But the most memorable moment came when Lucy May asked for everyone's attention. "I have something to say," she announced, standing on a chair so everyone could see her. "I want to thank all of you for coming to celebrate my mama and my new papa, but mostly I want to tell you how this all started." Elizabeth and Ben exchanged amused glances, wondering what their daughter was planning to share. "It all started because I noticed that Mama was lonely and that Mr. Ben looked sad when he came to town. So I decided they should meet each